Hey, it's Todd Ault. This is episode 226. We are in the Indianapolis 500. We're in basically the inner sanctum of it. We're in the inner circle of the racetrack. Which, if you ever watch this great video, you see that you could put the pyramids inside here, the Roman Colosseum. You could put there's so many things you can put inside. It's such a big venue. It's gigantic, 2.5 miles. But I got a special guest today, Josh Caspi, CEO of Caspi Development. Josh, what's going on?
Hey, how are you, Todd?
I'm good, my man. So Josh has joined us. The Caspi family, I've known them for a long time. His dad was really a mentor to me and like a father, and effectively helped me get in the business, I think, more than one time. We've talked about that probably before. But this is a special episode of Risk On. It's the May 28th, the day before the Indy 500. And obviously, this is Risk On, one of the greatest shows about risk ever, but we all know that's not true. But hoping to be someday. But speaking of risk, the reason why I wanted to have you on the show is because you're opening an improbable hotel that I actually wondered if it was ever going to get built. I'm sure you maybe had your doubts. Maybe you never had any doubts. But this is a marquee hotel that's opening in New York City. To say that this wasn't a Herculean task, wasn't a monumental amount of risk, is an understatement.
Risk was the ethos of the entire experience. My dad always was a risk taker in his career, and I think he had conviction in what he did, and I followed that kind of lead in terms of understanding the key moments to take risk versus just throwing risk at any certain situations. So this situation happened to be one of the best locations in New York City, if not the best location, in the northwest corner of Tribeca, which is arguably the highest per capita income in the United States. The location is an implausible area to build a hotel. So to have the zoning, to have the footprint of land, and to have that accessibility was a generational opportunity. So when you understand the dynamics of New York City and you understand the depth and gravity of that location, you really get to appreciate what you're working towards. So 7 years in a development life of a project is a long project, but in a generational real estate investment portfolio, it's a drop in the bucket. So
let's go to present day. What's the actual working title, the official title of the property today? When it opens, what's it going to be actually called?
It'll be called Les Fouquet's Tribeca, actually. But yeah, exactly.
Les Fouquet's
what
Tribeca.
You see right here, Les Fouquet's New York.
Les Fouquet's New York, right?
So
and talk about that brand for a second.
So the brand originated in the 1890s. It was a restaurant in Paris on the Champs-Élysées. It was created by a gentleman with the last name Fouquet's, and it was a restaurant that hosted the Cigars, which was the awards for film in France. Lucien Barrière acquired that restaurant, and he grew the brand into a hotel franchise of various hotels in Normandy, Deauville, in all around the wine regions in France. And he became a prolific figure in France and created a French dynasty family, essentially, that is now 3 generations. And they own 18 hotels. And I think about a decade ago, they realized they wanted to be relevant to the United States. They're not well known in the United States, so they started to search out opportunities in the U.S. And we came across them in 2015 and got to meet Dominique Dessein-Barrière, Alexander Dessein-Barrière, who's the youngest generation, and really appreciated the family-run business that they are, and how it aligned with our family-run business, which is a 3-generation business as well.
So, I mean, to the extent it's not, how did you get involved? I mean, like, how do you decide, I'm going to build a hotel in New York City? Forget COVID, because you didn't know that was coming.
Right.
But how did you decide you were going to get involved? Like, how far does it go back? Because the project has been going on a long time.
Well, so I always wanted to be in the hotel business. I grew up working for my dad in the 90s, and he had built a great hotel called the Chambers in Midtown, and I loved the electricity of being in the hotel industry, and it turned me on. So I always wanted to be in it, but the opportunity didn't arise to have like the perfect situation. This piece of land came to us in 2014, late 2014, and I brought my dad down there in November. And we looked at the site and we said, whatever happens here, good things are going to come to this site because of the location, and you just feel the gravity of it. So we acquired the site in January 2015, and we went through a brand vetting process with Jones Lang LaSalle, and Jeff Davis, one of the most well-known guys in the hotel industry. He brought us 56 brands. He said it was the most successful brand vetting process he's ever had in the history of Jones Lang. We interviewed every five-star brand in the entire world. They came to us with stacks and stacks of planned concepts that we reviewed, and it was a priceless exercise. Ultimately, we finalized 3 candidates that we thought were the right fit for this, one of which was Barriere. But Barriere was sort of an outlier because at the time that we were reviewing these guys, we never heard of them. So we said, one of my partners said, let's get on a plane. It's the summer. Let's go check them out in Cannes, south of France, Paris. What do we have to lose, right? So
except being in Paris.
So we get on the plane and we land. There's security guards waiting for us at the door of the plane with gifts. They whisk us through. We meet this wonderful driver, Steve, who we're still friends to this day. He's coming to the opening. He takes us around. We have 25 staff waiting to greet us, and the rest was history. It was an experience like no other, with hospitality, old, rich, European culture hospitality. Blew my mind. One little anecdote. I like cigars. I like this one, but I like. I'm a big Cohiba fan. I like Cohiba Maduro Robustos. They've always been sort of one of the cigars that I love. So I had this gentleman, Steve, drive me to the local cigar shop in Paris, and I picked up, I don't know, 1 or 2, and I'm smoking it in the Fouquet's in the hotel in Paris. And then the next day we fly down to Cannes, to the Majestic, their property there, and they keep an eye on you, this brand. So I get into my suite, and there's an Ellie Blue humidor with a dozen of these exact cigars waiting for me. And I said, these guys are class act. And the rest is history, really. We signed them up.
It's funny, John Stewart, who runs the events for us at Indy, when he finds out, that I like a certain kind of Jelly Belly, or people like a certain kind of thing, or jerseys for everyone, it's the same exact experience, right? That where they notice something and then they are on top of it, right?
The personalized touch.
It makes the difference, right?
The experience, the personalization, and taking good care of someone enthusiastically and authentically is really the essence of what this whole brand is about, and what we're going to do in New York. And I honestly don't think there's a single 5-star brand in the United States that understands this deep, rich, authentic European hospitality that we're bringing over here.
So I've known your family a long time. I've known you a long time. I knew you before you got married to Morgan, before you had the 3 boys. And your dad, to me, and I've heard some iconic stories about buying, entire hotels on napkins, bankrupting hotels to save them, etc. And I've kind of felt personally, from a guy who's been coached and probably disciplined about how sometimes I do some pretty stupid things, right, from your father. I felt like this hotel was going to be massively successful because it had the hallmarks of you having to will it into existence, right? And what I mean by that is that when I started when I took over originally Franklin, and then when I took over what is DPW with Caspi Development's help, it's never been a straight line. It's like, if you think like, they go, wow, because then I think we just passed the close to 550 million in assets at BidNow, the former DPW, and people are like, oh, wow, it's wow, suddenly you guys have a bigger presence, but it's not always that way. And I think that anything worth having, I wish that I was part of projects that, like, you planned everything out, they went exactly into plan, there's no drama behind them, but this property, I have talked to people in the industry I talked to the people at Bear Air, actually. Met them at the, what was that opening thing when we put the final
the topping out, yeah.
The topping party.
Yeah.
And you kind of willed this into existence, right? I mean, there were moments in time where this was not going to happen. Can you talk about some of those?
There was many dark days. We got to this elated kind of euphoric moment where we chose the brand, and then we were faced with, well, how do we build it? We had to reconsider who our builder was. We needed to find a 5-star hotel capable builder, which then ended up being ACOM Tishman. But the process of going through a ground lease in Manhattan, a landmark site, financing headwinds during the worst markets for New York City as a whole, revenue per available room was on a decline for the first time in decades, where New York City was very dense, had an amazing growth. The saturation had led to a decline in the RevPAR, so lenders were not stepping up in 15, 16, 17, and we were carrying this site, and we couldn't really break ground in earnest until we sort of put together the financing capabilities. So we had all allocated capital to this thing, but a project of this scale requires several $100 million. So we were looking for a lender. We couldn't find a lender. We had to just a leap of faith, like that scene in Indiana Jones where he walks out and he just puts his foot into this 100-foot canyon, and you don't know what's next. You had to have that leap of faith and just say, wherever I'm going, I'm going to end up, and you try your best. So by happenstance, we took a leap on a gentleman, Aaron Schock. He stepped up with some equity and brought in a partner by the name of Jim Parks. We had to throw this thing into a Chapter 11 in 2019 because we didn't have a lender at the time, but we had a very controversial relationship with our ground lessor, which ended up becoming an amicable situation ultimately, but it led to finding a Korean bank from Seoul, Korea, one of the biggest lenders in the world, basically the Goldman Sachs of Korea, Hana Investment. They lent us $145 million, but it was every step of the way, every twist, every turn was a setback. We had many times where we got to the altar to finalize a deal with a lender or an investor, and it ended up going sideways for one reason or another. So, at a certain point in time, you quit, right? So, but my father always said to me, quitters never win, winners never quit. When I was a little kid, I remember exactly where I was told that. So I just stuck it out indefinitely, and it felt ludicrous.
It did. I remember you trying to explain it to me, and I understand some complicated stuff, and you're like, well, we're going to put it into bankruptcy because we have a ground lease. You tried to explain to me why we were going to do it, and I was like, the only hope I had was that I knew your father, Caspi Development, had to put stuff in bankruptcy before because of union issues or other issues that were not reasonable, where people would not be reasonable. And the part that's weird is that only bankruptcy and that sort of stay makes people become more reasonable, which is a strange thing, right? Because the outcome is the same, but you have to force them into the outcome. And it's a weird gig. And I remember like kind of plugging my nose going, okay, because we actually kept it on our books at the same valuation. My auditors are like, how is this the case? I'm like, it's the Caspies, it'll be all right, which it was. I thought it was a little insane, but...
Well, when the first time I walked out of the bankruptcy court and I listened to the judge speak, I got in the car and Tom Petty song came on, and it was that song...
Won't Back Down?
Yeah, Won't Back Down. And it was just like one of those moments.
Serendipity.
Yeah, well, it felt like you could see the light at the end of the tunnel, and that was June of 19, after 4 years of just breaking our ass trying to figure this thing out. And we broke ground with ACOM Tishman without a loan, pumping and funneling the money. We had $40 million of cash in the deal without any debt or any clear kind of outcome. We just kept going deeper and deeper in the hole. So when that happened, I said, okay. I said, I think we might get somewhere. And then and then a month later, I signed the loan term sheet. My partner that was involved in the deal pulled out, and then my appendix burst, and I had to be airlifted to the hospital. And
I'm not laughing about
yeah,
that.
it's
I remember all this happening,
Yeah,
and I'm
it's
thinking to
crazy.
myself,
It's crazy.
I remember texting your wife, and she's like, I think we're okay.
We were moving to Greenwich. My kids were in camp. My appendix burst on the island of Nantucket. They airlifted me in a helicopter in the middle of the night. Took out the appendix, shipped me home on a train, and then a few days later, I had a bowel complication blockage because of the surgery. Had to go back to the hospital. They put me on a nasal gastro tube for a week. The kids were still in camp, and I was signing, trying to finish this thing in the hospital with the tube and everything. And so I started. I said to the doctor, I said, I got to get out of this place. Like, what do I do? He goes, you gotta break up your system. So he said you could walk a little. So I started walking with the tube and attached safety pin to my shirt, and then I started running laps up and down the stairs in the hospital and listening to the Rocky IV soundtrack, and it worked. I got out of there. So I got home, and I still had the IV, the pick in the arm, and
it's an
Aaron
unusual
came to me.
process, by the way, when they tell you that the way you can go home is to have a bowel movement.
Right.
Like, you
Yeah,
can go
yeah,
home,
yeah.
but people don't understand that that your body kind of shuts down during trauma and creates kind of even a worse situation if you're not active. People always wonder, like, why do you have knee surgery? And then the doctor says, okay, got to get up and walk. You're like, what? I just had knee surgery.
Right.
I want to sit here. No, you're not allowed to sit here. So, what do we got here?
Jack Root.
Oh, hey, Jack.
I'm just watching.
Oh, that's okay. The legendary Jack Root. Dude, this is Jack. Dude, oh my, whatever. I'm sorry. I'm mesmerized by. I mean, this is the voice of Indy. So, anyways,
Great, yeah, excellent.
He did one of my favorite interviews ever. I was just telling him last night that one of my favorite interviews he ever did was with Danica Patrick, but we'll cover that another time. Anyway, so I've kind of, after all this, and you got it built, I thought, okay, now this is going to be massively successful, because in order to get here, nothing ever is easy. I thought you could argue that people say, well, how do I do something? Well, you just do it, right? You just do it and keep doing it. But you kind of were in training for this kind of thing before, right? Because when you started the hotel business, you were actually hauling cement and doing, you were doing the actual work.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, my whole career was adversity in all types of real estate scenarios. From, well, I started in the concrete laborers union. I was working, doing high-rise superstructures as a laborer, and that was physically enduring, right? Not mentally. You go home and you shut down. It was great. But, I mean, along my career, I always had setbacks and things. I built in Miami during 04, 05, 06. And then, the financial crisis, obviously. Built a hotel in Manhattan right during the financial crisis in 08 down in the Lower East Side. So definitely had to figure out problems and had to, come to solutions that I didn't know were going to be presented. But in this instance, it went on for so long that I really questioned whether or not anything was ever going to happen. It seemed futile. But when we closed that loan in November of 19 and we broke ground, I really said, this is real.
So who has the flair for taste? Is it Morgan or you? And I really want to get this answer, because I would say to you, like, when I see you dress, when I see the things you choose at the hotels, when I see, people don't really know this about you, because obviously you guys you're kind of a low-key developer in the sense that you're not out there publishing a lot of stuff, but you build a ton of office buildings in New York City. I've been to some of them. Very eclectic, very beautiful, well-interiored, really a kind of place you'd want to work. And obviously it's evident because all your properties sell, all your properties are leased up. It's pretty amazing stuff you're building. But is it you with the eye, or is it Morgan with the eye?
So Morgan has a materiality. She's very good with fabrics and accessorizing, and she has the ability to pull things together that you wouldn't necessarily expect. But this hotel was a bear of its own. I mean, so Morgan and I, in our personal life, we design things together. We do our homes, and
All of them beautiful.
She's got a great eye. I would give her the majority of the credit for those things. I'm more of a spatial design person, definitely aesthetically oriented, and I have my own feelings about things, and we're a team. We're a true team. I would say I don't think that any of the stuff we do would be what it was without the two of us working together. But in the instance of this hotel in particular, Martin Brudnitsky was a rock star. I mean, the guy is a genius. He does things that you look on paper and you say, I don't know if that's going to work, and then you have the brand telling you, I'm not sure if that's going to work, and then you say, just trust in this guy. And then the end result is staggering, and you'll see it in this property when it opens.
So is the property going to have the gorilla or not? Did you guys decide on that or not yet?
Oh, we bought the gorilla, and it's coming next month. And it has a 30-inch Eiffel Tower of rubies in its arm, and it has an American flag out of Swarovski crystals. It's very cool.
And will it have a Birkin bag? Where it'll be holding a Birkin bag?
No, it won't hold the Birkin bag. It'll have.
I heard that idea. I think that idea is
Birkin
great.
was a cool idea for sure.
It's going to be a beautiful hotel. So walk us through. You do all these things and you get it financed, but I noticed you left out COVID.
Well, so, we lost 71 days shut down during COVID, which cost $2.5 million. Just carry the land, carry the staff, carry everything, because we're just sitting in limbo. But, we had neighboring buildings that were built hundreds of years ago that we were disturbing soils, in the area, and we had to shore them up with structural steel in order to maintain them. So, those challenges of construction and development in areas that have landmarks are really enormous. But once we
had to go down too, right? Pretty deep.
Yeah, we dug about 25 feet below the Hudson River, and we put a sea-can pile system around the perimeter of the property that locked in the water. And then once we got out of the ground and the superstructure shot up in 8 weeks, and then everything from that point on just flew. But COVID presented a million potential risks with shipping from China, for example. We have 14 containers coming from Shanghai. 3 of the containers were just in limbo during this last COVID phase. We had, all kinds of labor and staffing issues during COVID where, our elevator company, for example, didn't have the capacity to execute something on time. So, those things were always present. And we're still getting our last bits from Spain for our door hardware from Salto, Lutron. All these people, they didn't have panels. The fabrics weren't delivered on time. So, and then there were people that would just say that they had a COVID problem because they were just delayed in general. So you had that too. Yeah. So everything in between.
Yeah, I noticed that for me, everything became COVID. Every excuse I heard from everyone was COVID. Like I didn't, it didn't matter what it was.
Yeah.
It made no sense to me. But you guys actually had issues though. I mean, this is you're building in New York City. You're building Union, right? I mean, it was a Union project.
Portion. The foundation was urban construction, which is the best in New York City for complex foundation work. So they're a Union outfit. Yeah, they're a great bunch.
So where are you today in terms of when you think you're going to open?
So we're getting our TCO on June 2nd, which is next week. Furniture move-in starts June 17th, which is 3 weeks from now. The building looks astonishing. We will have August, the soft opening, where we'll host friends and family. And we're live already on the Lucien Barriere website, Les Fouquet's New York. If you Google it, you can make a reservation. There's a link. We're going to start taking paid reservations for September. We're hosting the Vogue Fashion Week party during Fashion Week in New York City. We're hosting the Vogue party.
Oh wow!
We have one of the we have my favorite DJ in the entire world that's coming from Saint-Tropez to the hotel to be a resident DJ for the week during Fashion Week.
Who's this?
His name is John. He's the best DJ in the world. I met him in St. Bart's, Saint-Tropez, and Cannes. He's a French DJ from Paris. He's amazing. We know him for a decade. Told him if I ever get this thing built, he's coming, and he's coming on September 9th. He'll be there.
Nice.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Are you excited, man? This is amazing.
It's hard to believe that it's actually happening and the place is opening, but there's so many details to be dealt with. The programming, the hire. We have 178 full-time staff that we've hired. We have an executive team. We have our chef making menus now. We're testing menus. We're tasting food. We have 3 restaurants. We have a members club. We have it's a significant bear of an operation.
When do people get to join the members club?
We're going to start in September. We're going to start taking a small group of members. Probably, we're not going to have a huge members group.
I can think of one of the first members. Can you think of one of the first members?
I can think of one.
I can think of one.
Yeah,
can't you?
For sure, yeah. I can.
So obviously, I committed to my company having a party there. When do you think we'd be having a party there? I mean, to me, it's officially open when we can have a party there.
I think October is the month for sure.
It?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got the theater, which doubles as a cabaret show and a nightclub. Basically, we can do whatever we want in it. It's an amazing space.
Do you have a?
It's not technically a nightclub, but if you rented it as a party, we could host a party like that would feel like that.
Do you want to do another one?
I just got back from Bordeaux and Saint-Tropez, and I spoke to a number of winery families that want to collaborate with us in Napa, potentially, and for sure the Fouquet's in Beverly Hills and Fouquet's in Miami are on the radar. So I'm in conversations already, but I think once this place opens and once people see the magnitude of what we're bringing, I think that the opportunities are just going to unfold.
It'll probably be easier the second, and third, and fourth time around, right?
I think so. Yeah,
we wouldn't probably have that experience, right?
No, definitely not building in New York City will be a big part of that.
What's your thoughts? I mean, New York rents are higher than pre-COVID. I can't quite figure out New York. I would have thought that New York rents would have stayed down for a while, but they really didn't. Why is it? Right. What's up with New York rents?
I would say that.
I mean, they're really so expensive. Like, yeah, for a 700 square foot place, it's just incredible.
Yeah, the city has an enormous audience. Obviously, that wants to live there. I think the resiliency comes with knowing that we're past COVID. People see the future growth of the city. People want to grab opportunities while they lasted. And as absorption came quick, back to school, back to families coming back with kids that were going to school or college kids, all of this kind of flowed in 21, and that density enabled the landlords to spike rents like astronomically. And I think when you compare to San Francisco, which was always the leader in the highest rents in the country, and we just surpassed them, I think a big part of that comes from the element of Silicon Valley and how the tech space really influenced the ability to work from anywhere, right? And I think New York City has a much heavier financial base. So I think a lot of people, even though they're not technically going to their office 100% of the time, they need to physically be in New York City. So I think
if we had a risk-on guy, like a risk-on moment of the year or the decade, you'd be up there in terms of choices. You literally fought this through. It reminds me a lot of myself because I have been beaten down and have to fight back. And you literally had moments in time where you were sick in the hospital. COVID was happening. Union problems are happening. Issues with the ground lease. Getting financing. I don't think people realize what a Herculean task this was.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
And so when you open it, I presume it's going to be the biggest deal. I mean, is it to you in your career the biggest thing you've ever done?
Yeah, I would say in terms of the magnitude of the effort and sort of what we're bringing in a long-term generational sense to New York City, it's a once in a lifetime situation.
Yeah, I know we're planning on having our annual meeting there. We're going to bring the whole board there.
I have the suite already picked out.
We're pretty excited about it, right? But talk about something I say all the time, and I don't know whether this is true or not, but I've heard, I might be wrong, so I apologize if I'm wrong, but is it not the most expensive hotel per room ever made in the history of hotels?
Well, certainly in the United States, it's eclipsed pretty much any not the proudest metric, but by default of what we're putting into it in terms of infrastructure on a per room basis, it's eclipsed pretty much any hotel in the United States and potentially any in the world. But if you look at a boutique hotel, for example, like a 20-room hotel that is more designed like a residence, that per room might be higher, but in a traditional sense, I would say,
this is 96 keys, right?
97. We have an extra room in the presidential that could be split out, so it's technically 97 rooms, and we're into it for over 220 million, and it's on a ground lease, so you have to imply the cost of that as well. So it's
when you think about staying there. I've heard the term 7-star, which really doesn't exist. This is 5-star is the crown jewel, right? So this is a 5-star plus hotel, 5-star.
Yeah, I mean,
4 3/4.
The Burj Al Arab, right, which is the Burj in Dubai, calls itself a 7-star hotel, and I think it's mainly derived by someone's envisionment of what the landscape looks like and what their hotel is compared to the landscape of the city. So in my mind, if you compare the amenities that we have and the restaurant offerings and the room size and the finishes and all of it together in the landscape of New York City, we're superior in every way, and ergo the rates will indicate that as well.
One of the most fascinating projects I've ever been part of, one of the most dedicated projects, everyone, Josh Caspi, CEO of Caspi Development. Now, those of you who live in New York City or around the world will want to see this property. I assure you, after me seeing this and all the years it's being built, it truly an amazing property. By the way, can we talk about the location for a second? Your neighbors are incredible. Like, I mean, this is a who's who of anyone. Can you talk about that area a little bit?
Yeah, so you got Bradley Cooper across the street. He is the penthouse. Beyonce and Jay-Z are directly across the street. Tom Brady and Giselle have a unit. We have Kevin Love around the corner. We've got the guy that was. There's so many. It's endless.
It kind of has this. When I drive around there sometimes, isn't it kind of cobblestone or something?
Yeah, it's a cobblestone street. It's actually in debate on whether or not they're going to replace it with asphalt. I don't think that'll ever be allowed. It really brings the charm to the area. We actually are fixing the cobblestone right now. It's costing us hundreds of thousands to correct those cobblestones because we're bound to have some pretty expensive cars that are coming there that potentially, exotics and things that need clearance. So we there's big gaps and things in the road right now we're fixing.
But in terms of the area, it's pretty iconic right there.
It's stunning. Every single floor of each room. I always say, like, if you sit in the second floor of the hotel and you sit in the corner room, you look out. It's picturesque in a way that's so quintessential New York City historically.
Have you ever been to the Indy 500?
Never been.
What do you think of the size?
It's outrageous.
Outrageous.
It's Todd Ault level action here.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
You are in for a great experience tomorrow when it goes. I love the thing that says green, and they go into turn 1, 33 cars all roaring towards the start of the race. It's truly, there's only two things that happen. Either it's too loud, you never want to be in an Indy race again, or it's in your DNA. It gets implanted in your DNA, and the people you meet here, and the people that'll be coming to La Fouquet. I've been telling everyone about it. We're building our plans in New York around the hotel. I think you built something iconic, and you heard it here first. If you probably heard it on other channels, but those of you who have a chance, obviously you're gonna have to check it out in September. BitNile Holdings, which owns through a subsidiary a portion of it. We're a small player in a pond of only a few. Really an iconic property. Josh Caspi, CEO of Caspi Development. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Thanks
Appreciate
for
your family. I love your family. I love what you're doing, and I love your tenacity, and you are truly risk on. Everybody, thanks for tuning in today. It's Saturday, the 28th of May, one day away from the Indy 500. What a better day to talk about risk and about building. You guys, check out La Fouquet. You guys will be able to see links on our channel. Obviously, we've been part of this project for a long time. We're super proud of it. Special thanks to Josh Caspi, Steve Caspi, Morgan Caspi, the Caspi family. Liz is here. Everybody take care. Everybody risk on, and we'll see you on Wednesday for a special live broadcast. Take care, everybody. Be well.